Hello, and welcome back to This Month on the Railroad, my monthly train news segment where I recap the notable train-related news of each month. This month's episode is for February of 2022, but before we get into the news that occurred in February, let's first cover the news stories that I missed at the end of last month. On January 25th, Union Pacific announced their order of 20 battery-powered freight locomotives, 10 of which will be Wabtec FLX drive locomotives, and 10 of which will be Progress Rail dual locomotives. When these locomotives are delivered in 2023 and 2024, they'll be pitted against each other to determine which type of battery locomotive is best for Union Pacific. These two types of locomotives will be tested at North Platte, UP's biggest classification yard, and in the greater Los Angeles area. Whichever manufacturer Union Pacific prefers will most likely receive a large order for more battery locomotives. On the 27th, the Maryland Board of Public Works approved for construction to resume on their new Purple Line light rail connecting Bethesda and New Carrollton. Construction was halted in 2020, and now that it's getting going once again, the line should be completed in 2026, with construction officially recommencing this spring. The next day, Montreal commuter rail Exo, formerly known as AMT, announced their order of 10 brand new Siemens Charger locomotives, which will replace the current F59PH locomotives. The first group of locomotives will be delivered in 2025, and if Exo likes these 10, they'll most likely order another 10 to replace the slightly newer F59PHIs. It's unclear whether these new locomotives will use the traditional SC44 notched front end or the new ALC-42 style nose cone, but official Siemens mock-ups would suggest the latter. Finally, into February now. On the 1st, SEPTA announced that they were looking for a company that would buy their 7 AEM-7s and 1 ALP-44 to scrap them. This group of 8 electrics were recently replaced by ACS-64s, and ever since their replacement they've been in storage, awaiting their inevitable scrapping. Pretty soon, once a company is found, all 8 locomotives will be scrapped on site, ending the era of AEM-7s on SEPTA. Continuing this story of the train circle of life, on the same day, Amtrak Midwest Siemens Venture cars entered service on Train 303. These brand new Venture cars sat around Chicago for months following a case where lead was found in the water management systems of these cars. Once new systems were retrofitted into these cars in Chicago, they finally debuted on the Lincoln service. As you can see, Amfleet Cafe cars are still used on these trains, but new cafe cars should be arriving in a year or two, along with cab cars for the Hiawatha, both of which are in production. Venture cars will slowly be phased into service on the Amtrak Midwest services at a rate of 8 cars per month, and soon enough, Amtrak's Midwest trains will look much more modern all across the board. The next day, Metra F40PH-3 number 131 was spotted sporting a fresh new variation of Metra's current paint scheme. This variation does away with the gradient on the side of the locomotives, giving them a much cleaner look, and apparently the following locomotives to be rebuilt for Metra will be painted in this cleaner paint scheme, rather than this dated paint scheme seen on the older rebuilds. Going back to the theme of Exo's new equipment, on the 3rd, new pictures surfaced of the first 2 of 44 CRRC cars which Exo ordered a few years ago. Later in the month, these 2 coaches were put on flat cars and shipped to Montreal, but unfortunately, on the way there, these 2 rather tall cars struck a bridge, causing damage to both the bridge and the new cars. This accident, likely caused by a lack of care from CN, is yet another setback to the already delayed production of these cars. As of now, we don't know how far this will set Exo back in the process of receiving these CRRC cars, but I doubt that 32 of these cars will enter service by early 2023 as Exo and CRRC planned. On the 7th, Brightline's new Bright Blue 2 train set arrived on property, but instead of being delivered to the West Palm Beach shops like all other Brightline trains were, this train was delivered to the brand new Orlando shops, making the first Brightline train to go to Orlando. This is big news for the Orlando Extension project, and soon enough we'll see this train testing on the new high-speed line built in the right-of-way of State Route 528 between Cocoa and Orlando. Additionally, the mystery of the missing nose decals has been solved, as someone said that the decals will be installed by crews at the Orlando maintenance facility as part of training for the employees there. The next day, 2 Amtrak ALC-42s officially entered service on the Empire Builder out of Chicago, making for the first time the ALC-42s were used in revenue service. The plan was for ALC-42s number 301 and 302 to lead the builder, but unfortunately after a press event at Chicago's Union Station, the leader 301 had PTC issues and an older P42 locomotive was put in front of the 2 Chargers. This is some really big news, as the ALC-42s will be the face of Amtrak's trains for the next 20 or 30 years, but it certainly is unfortunate that they couldn't lead. Still, would it really be an Amtrak equipment procurement if there weren't any issues? Luckily, on the 10th, 302 led the builder between Spokane and Seattle, while 301 trailed on the Portland section. 301 made it up to Seattle on a Cascades train, being put on the eastbound Empire Builder departing Seattle on the 12th. Despite the fact that it hit a car somewhere in Washington state, 302 still led, now with a new dent on the left side of its nose. Throughout the month, ALC-42s continued to be slowly phased into service on the Empire Builder, despite having several different mechanical issues which I'll talk about later in the video. In other ALC-40 news, at that press event that occurred in Chicago on the 8th, it was announced that Amtrak would add another 50 ALC-42s to their order, making for a total of 125 units to be delivered over the course of the next few years. A couple days later, on the 10th, New Jersey Transit announced that they added an additional 25 cars to their order of 113 electric multiple unit Alstom multi-level cars ordered in 2018. The first cars of the initial order are planned to be delivered beginning this summer, with deliveries continuing on through 2026. After the first 113 cars are delivered in 2026, this group of 25 cars will be delivered. Funding for these cars was provided by the Portal Bridge project, which I talked about a few months ago. On the 15th, Brightline announced that their new 3.5-mile long line between State Route 528 and their new maintenance facility in Orlando is complete, making it the first of 4 construction sections to be completed on their new West Palm Beach to Orlando extension. Once again, this is proof that Brightline is making great progress on the new Orlando line, which is still set to begin service in early 2023. On the 20th, ALC-42s numbers 300 and 301 were leading the westbound Empire Builder through North Dakota when they suddenly began to experience severe mechanical issues caused by cold weather. Both locomotives shut down, bringing the train to a standstill, and while the older P-42s behind the two Chargers provided power and heating for the passengers, a BNSF locomotive was added onto the head end of the train to pull it west. Unfortunately, unlike the PTC issues plaguing locomotives earlier in the month, the engine failure caused by cold weather was a hardware issue that'll take a lot more time and money to fix, because this is not the first time that Chargers have struggled in the snow. As of right now, we don't know how Amtrak and Siemens plan to fix this issue, but hopefully it'll be resolved soon. On the 22nd, pictures surfaced of MBTA GP40MC number 1137 now sporting MassDOT blue paint similar to 1136. Now, just one locomotive being rebuilt doesn't really seem like very big news, but the MBTA has been overhauling these GP40MCs for a few years now, and still, 1137 is only the second locomotive to be completed. 1137 is very similar to 1136, with only a few minor differences, the most notable being LED headlights and ditch lights. 1137 will likely do the same thing as 1136, that being work train service, Cape Flyer service, and occasional regular passenger service. Despite the fact that I don't really like the GP40MCs that much, it's nice to see that such an old locomotive is getting a new lease on life, and I definitely do think that the MassDOT blue looks good on this locomotive, despite the fact that it's slightly different from 1136. The next day, 2 more Amtrak ALC-42s departed the Siemens Mobility plant in Florin, California, those being number 306 and 307. These 2 ALC-42s are some of the last long-distance Chargers that'll wear the Phase 6 paint scheme, with the next batch, 308 and 309, being the last Phase 6 ALC-42 and the first Phase 7 ALC-42. On the 28th, the South Shore Line began construction in Michigan City, Indiana, where for years trains have run right down the middle of 10th and 11th Streets. In recent years, a need for 2 tracks has pushed plans for a new route through Michigan City, bringing an end to one of America's last interurban railways. Luckily for rail fans, non-revenue trains will continue to street run overnight, but for passengers, the street running portion of the South Shore Line will be a bus shuttle until the new non-street running line is completed. And that's February. There was definitely some very big news, such as the debut of Amtrak's ALC-42s, but unfortunately bad news such as the new Exo cars being damaged in delivery, the last street running South Shore Line train, and of course mechanical issues seen on the ALC-42s seem to overshadow it. Anyways, I don't want to end the video on a bad note, so in better news, American High Speed Rail Week 2 should be coming out somewhat soon, as in late March or possibly early April, so that's something to look forward to. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you very soon in another video.